Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
I know you don't like people to talk about how great you are, Congressman, but you really are a true statesman, a medical doctor, someone who's been given honorary degrees for your understanding of economics. And yourself, Judge Andrew Napolitano, and many others in the last 8 months have come on this show repeatedly. And I read the bill as well on air. The financial reform bill allows the SEC to have secrecy, autonomy, cannot be investigated for covering up for Madoff for 10 years. It allows this private board of the Federal Reserve to have more power over the economy in their 97 years of looting as a front group for private banks. And now that's all come true, so I'd like you to speak to that, A. But then, B, you also read the different versions of the health care bill and said this raises taxes, cuts benefits. It does allow the government to come in and set parameters on what type of care people will get. And the Democrats and Republican leadership, they stonewalled on this and said none of that was true. Now, everything you said 6 months ago on this show is admitted. They're coming out and admitting, okay, this doesn't cover pre-existing conditions. It's a tax increase, and the insurance companies wrote it to rip you off as a bailout. Okay, it's true. This gives the Federal Reserve even more power, and more junk bonds are being issued, and record derivatives are being issued. I mean, it's clear they're accelerating all this over the edge of the cliff. So I mean, you've been proven right again. I mean, it's so incredible how criminal this is.
Well, I guess it's better late than never. People are starting to read it and find out. I think the most atrocious statement came from Nancy Pelosi when she says, well, when people were arguing, well, we need to see the bill and study this, she says something like, well, we need to pass the bill so we can read it. And that's, the understatement of the century, because that's exactly what happens. And even as hard as my staff works, every little comma and every little phrase, it's pretty tough to dissect all of that. That's why the whole process is so bad. But I protect myself against ever endorsing that, because it doesn't take long to find out what their goals are and what their intent is, making government bigger, raising more taxes. But even as bad as it is, it's even worse than some people think. Barney Frank is a big regulator. He loves this stuff, and I work with him on some issues, but obviously on this regulatory bill I did not. And he, I believe, was honestly surprised about how much more power was given to the SEC. Because he has a sort of an instinct of more transparency, and he actually wants to do something about that. And he is probably the most informed person about that bill as it was going through. I'm amazed at how much detail he knows, but he can't possibly know every single thing the Fed and the SEC does behind the scenes. It sticks this stuff in at the last minute, and it's just absolutely out of control, and that's why this system will end and has to be replaced by something else.
Again, Congressman Ron Paul joins us. Remember, a month and a half ago, Senator DeMint got up and reported that 94% of the Senate bills are never even read and are literally written by the special interest lobbyists, many of them foreign lobbyists. This is a foreign corporate takeover of our government. If the president can launch wars without Congress declaring it, the private central banks can issue all this fiat currency to their enrichment and our detriment. But he said in his speech he didn't know the number on the House. Do we have any idea of what number of House bills are never even read and are brought out 30 minutes before they're passed?
Not exactly. The big problem would be that some of those bills float around and you can read them, but when the night before they're due to come to the floor, they go to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee has tremendous license to change things. The chairman of the Rules Committee can have a manager's amendment, which was used originally to change some grammatical things and just a few technical things, technical changes. But now they use the manager's amendment to replace the whole bill. That's what they did with the Patriot Act. Bob Barr and others tried to protect us to a degree, against the Patriot Act. He worked months on, or at least several weeks on that. But when the manager's amendment came from the Rules Committee, they put the whole whole new bill into it, which meant that nobody could read it. So it depends on the particular issue. But even if the bill's available, the financial reform bill was available and discussed in a lot of hearings and a lot of talk, but that still doesn't mean that many members would have had a total comprehension and been able to read this bill. It is so massive. So I would say that if you were talking about how often all the members read everything that's being presented, I would think that it's less than 5% where people can say, oh, I've read the whole bill and I fully understand it. That just very rarely happens.
And that's why you're known as Dr. No, and they tried to criticize you, because if you can't read some 3,000-page bill and they give it to you an hour before it's time to vote, it would be immoral for you to pass it.
No, that should be an easy no for everybody, and hopefully what's going on in this country, it'll get easier because the American people are sick and tired of this. I mean, sometimes they just say, why don't you guys read the bills? Why don't we do anything else? Let's have a delayed time. Read the bills. But that I think is good, that the American people are getting very upset with the status quo, and I think they're wise enough now to be very cautious about saying, well, if we just elect the Republicans, they'll take care of us. So this is a Republican versus Democrat issue. It isn't. It's the people who believe in big government and big taxes and a lot of war and welfare against the people who have to pay all the bills, and all they want is to be left alone.
Congressman, even establishment political analysts, as you know, admit there's been one of the biggest political realignments in history against the Democrats and the Republicans. Almost every pro-establishment candidate, whether they be Democrat or Republican, are losing in the primaries, and great patriots like your son, Dr. Rand Paul, are winning. That's got the system panicked. And the Daily Poll ran a story yesterday. Says Ron Paul to run for president in 2012 will announce in January 2011. I don't have any inside knowledge, but knowing you, you understand you'll be able to inject real issues into the debate. Your health is good, and of course it's great right now. I mean, I would imagine, being a man of honor, you're going to run, but this has some supposed inside official who's unnamed saying you've decided to announce in January of 2011. Congressman, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up to you.
Yeah, well, I don't know where they got that. They didn't get it from me. And the truth is what I've been saying for many, many months. I haven't decided to run. I haven't decided not to run. And it will obviously not be now or linked. It would not be this year. And it'll depend a lot on what I perceive as support. You know, a lot of people like what I'm doing, and they encourage me. But there are some that say, well, it's time for you to take a rest. Somebody else is about to do it. You know, that sort of thing. So I need to know, if the support is really out there. But certainly I gave no inside information just recently at Orlando, as was reported.
Coming at you live. Coming at you live. It's a reliable source of information. 50,000 unstoppable watts. Anthrax and radio and liquor.
You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth. A lie. No man is obsolete. You have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, like a ghost from another time. I am nothing more than a reminder to you that you cannot destroy truth by burning pages. You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning. I am a human being. Words, Mr. Wordsworth, that have no substance and no dimension, like air, like the wind. I don't care. I tell you, I don't care. I'm a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought aloud, that thought lives, even after I'm shoveled into my grave. Delusions, Mr. Wordsworth. Delusions that you inject into your veins to make you think you have a strength when you have no strength at all. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. It's Alex Jones.
But I would imagine if Rand does win and people support him, that's going to be a big plus for you running for president.
Yeah, I think this is all a benefit of what's happening to show that the status quo is something that needs to be changed. So whether it's Rand's race or others, I think it's all very positive.
When your son said, I've got a message to Washington, the Tea Party's coming, no to your carbon tax, no to your elitism, no to your globalism, it scared him. So they've run 5 hoaxes. They claimed he wanted to get rid of the Civil Rights Act when he said, excuse me, I can't hear you. Yes, no, I don't want to get rid of it. They claimed he wasn't a doctor, complete hoax. They have been caught. This is mainstream news, sending people from the Democratic Party to pose as racist supporters of Rand. They then, even 3 days after that lady admitted that nobody tied her up, nobody made her take bong hits, none of this happened. Still, no retractions from GQ, no retractions from Huffington Post. They're still going with it. My listeners made Rand Paul hoax the #1 search term last Friday, and hundreds of publications read our breakdown, saw that she'd retracted in the Washington Post, and so now it's out there that was a hoax. But I'm worried if he doesn't sue them, or at least stand up to them, next they'll say he killed Kennedy. Next they'll say he killed Jesus. Next they'll say that he burned the Reichstag. Next he'll say that, he let the cows out of the gate. I mean, next he'll say he's causing the wildfires in Russia. I mean, there's no end to how desperate they are. Yeah. I'm really worried about your son.
Well, there's a couple ways you can handle that. I do think you have to answer back. You just can't let it sitting out there. But you can't get overly defensive, or it gives them too much credibility. And I've been under those attacks, too, because you know, and I'm sure you share my views about how outrageous the war on drugs is and how that violates our civil liberties. So I've never supported the war on drugs, yet I detest the use of drugs for kids and all that. But they used that against me in '96. And I put a TV ad on, and I defended myself and explained why it's the war on drugs, not the drugs that I promote. And I think the other thing that we did that is so important is to try to get an image out there. The more, I can say a lot of things that might be controversial, but by this time, the people in Texas and people in my district know me, and they trust me, and then when they say, oh, Ron Paul wants to give kids drugs, nobody believes that stuff. Like all these things you're suggesting, nobody's going to believe that. The more people know Rand. So when they get to know him and see him as a physician with kids, last night I talked to him on the phone, which is rather rare, and he was out at a soccer game with his kids, So if they see that, I told him, I said, what you need to do is just make sure people know who you are. But I agree with you. You also have to be alert. You have to be willing to defend. I think it actually happened. They didn't threaten, but they insinuated that they might have to consider legal action. I think that's finally when there was a slight backing down on that, then they finally got the information from the girl and said, oh, no, I really didn't say that. So I think...
Well, my point is, Congressman, it shows how desperate they are. I mean, this is some of the dirtiest tricks I've ever seen, because they know he's a real bona fide, true constitutionalist, and if he becomes the leader of the Tea Party, that is going to supercharge you, perhaps even winning the presidency. We have to think big and realize that this is possible, and we have to realize that they're going to run other dirty tricks against you, and we've got to understand that's why it's so important to get behind Campaign for Liberty and donate, to get behind Rand right now, letters to the editor, everything. We've got to get him in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, and so far things are looking pretty good. I think he's holding his lead, and that's good. There's still a few months. But I think your word of caution is legitimate, because there's still a couple of months to go, and if they've done that much already, at the end, when they think you don't have enough time to answer or clarify, they may throw a lot more mud around.
They may claim he's really a vampire. I mean, they may say he's the Loch Ness Monster.
Well, let's hope they get over the top. I think they are over the top, and I think they've lost their credibility. So people are a little more sophisticated than I think a lot of people give them credit for. I was I assumed for many years, well, if they ever know what I really believe in, how little government I believe in, I couldn't possibly get elected. So sometimes I even surprise myself when people, wow, people really don't like big government. They want to be left alone.
Well,